Hi, and this is Daniel from ProgressBarAnalytics.com. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys a running history exploration with Timeline Storyteller in Power BI Reports. This is Power BI Reports in the iPad, and I'm going to be using this view today so I can show you the different types of visualizations possible and what I did with it. So this timeline over here, it shows my entire racing history for the last 10 years. I started off, you see in the legend over here, you can see 5Ks in blue, half marathons in orange, and marathons in red. And in the beginning of my journey, I thought that half marathons were going to be impossible until I did them. And then I thought that marathons were going to be impossible until cancer hit. But we'll go over that in a little bit. So this is the linear chronological unified view of the Timeline Storyteller. It shows you everything in one linear view, and everything is in chronological order in a unified fashion. If we switch to the linear logarithmic view, it shows time 0 as the present date, and then my most recent marathon, and then everything else that's been happening on a logarithmic scale, with all of my 5Ks being 100 months ago. And this gives a different perspective about what's happening in the racing world. Of course, there can be some improvements because a lot of stuff gets squished up as we look at the 50 and 40 month timelines. In the collapsed view, you see some bar graphs over here underneath the line of races, and it shows you the time in between the races as well as the finishing time for the different races over here. So there's races. If you click on it, the information that it's showing you is my total racing duration time. For the first marathon, I was out there for 357 minutes, and the second marathon, I was out there for over 400 minutes. And these bars, as you can see, are not relative to the duration time, but the time in between the races. There was a big period of time over here where I had a very, very short duration in between races. I was going hard for it. In the radial view, which is a little bit hard to see over here, but you see everything kind of like the linear fashion, but in a circle format, which is really nice on the eyes. Starting off in 2011 and ending in 2020, where we are today, you see these start with 5Ks, and then there's like a bunch of marathons over here in 2018 and 2019. In the radial sequential view, how satisfying. I really like those animations. You'll see everything as a unified, connected series of events. So instead of looking at the timeline, it's just looking at how many events there are. And I've done 25 races overall. And you can see the proportion of races over here. So 5Ks and half marathons to marathons and half marathons, sprinkling of 5Ks, marathons, more 5Ks. If we go to the linear chronological faceted view, the facet is an aspect that I added in to describe one aspect of the race. So for part of my racing career, I was running to save my life, which is represented over here in the middle, like this first 5K that I finished in 32 minutes. And then I did a bunch of 2 half marathons also in that same kind of format, right? Save my life, please. After I got out of treatment for cancer number 2, though, I started running with a vengeance. Because after you go through a couple cancers, you got a lot of, I had a lot of issues that I wanted to work through. So I started off with this first marathon for my bucket list, which I thought I was never going to do. I would have never imagined I could go from doing a 5K. And I said that half marathon was going to be like my one and done. But then after, there's this time in between this half marathon and this cancer over here, where I realized that there's more terrible things that could happen in life than some discomfort. That, from chemotherapy, I learned that some persistence is required for survival. And I did most of my racing history with that mindset. Everybody has this attitude with cancer, and I was no different. F cancer, and let's go get this done. Later on, though, I found a different purpose for running. And this is something I'll cover later on, but to make it brief with you guys, a lot of what I do now stands for people who want to survive these terrible conditions. Not just cancer, but also people who are in deep despair. Deep despair is also pretty terrible, and we don't exactly have a cure for it. But if we can stand together, maybe we can do something about it. So running with a purpose outside of myself and leaving vengeance behind was pretty nice. In the linear faceted version, you'll see this is all relative, okay? So this is a linear, relative, faceted timeline. And you'll see over here the amount of time I spent in each aspect. So in the vengeance mindset, I spent almost 5 years. And trying to save my life, I spent a couple of years. And I'm pretty new to this running for purpose thing. In the linear, logarithmic, faceted view, you'll see the relative time from the present. So running for purpose is pretty new. I've been doing it for about 10 months now. And it has driven me to a completely different experience in the fitness world. And of course, some incredible things were accomplished with the mindset of vengeance against cancer. But, considering what my mind looked like at the time, I'm happy to leave it behind. But I understand anybody that still has the scars and, feels pretty sore about it. And people will often start this journey wanting to save their life. But this was already 100 months ago. It's pretty weird to think about years like that. In terms of volume of races, in the sequential view, you can see how many races I've done with each purpose. So for vengeance, I have done 16 races, and then for purpose, I'm still on race number 4. But these are definitely my faster of the bunch. Radial, chronological, pretty nice. And radial, chronological, and faceted. So you'll see the timeline with the with the circles over here and what that looks like. And this is, the similar to the linear, except visually it's a little bit more appealing. I tend to prefer the linear version though, because it's easier to see everything in one view. Linear and relative, you'll see we covered this, the amount of time that you spent in each facet. And woo, okay, 5 years of running for vengeance, and I got a lot done over there. Got a lot done. When you take your mind off of how awful the running is, it's easy to go get some pretty amazing things done. But also, it can lead you to some pretty physical injuries. Satisfying. I really love how the sequential view looks in the radial format, especially with the faceted. So we're looking at the number of rices done for each purpose over here. And yeah, running with a vengeance, right? Revenge against cancer is pretty good. Here's our linear chronological segmented. This is segmented chronologically, so the segments are the years. And looking at this timeline, you can see pretty clearly I do not like to run in the summer. And I have done maybe a couple 5Ks in the summer, but that's about the extent of it. It is really hot, and I don't like to run when it's really hot. Radial chronological view is a little bit too split up for my tastes. The spiral timeline representation, I just straight up don't like this. Spiral, sequential, and faceted. It really just doesn't do it for me. But there you go. And even weirder is the curved sequential united. Just crunched everything into one data point. And that brings us back to the beginning. So thanks for watching with us as we explored the timeline storyteller with Power BI.